So actually, I wanted to talk about environmentals, and how all that stuff ties into training, programming, and even building, a dog world program in general. So I want to start the scene out like this. Say you go into a restaurant, right? You go into a restaurant, you walk in, you've already researched the menu. So you know that there's got to be at least something there that you want to eat. So you go into the restaurant, first thing you do, at least for me anyway, first thing I do is I start looking around. I start trying to see if I really want to eat here, regardless of what that menu said. Because see, me as a chef, I'm a stickler too, because you could have a great menu, but you could have shitty desserts, and I won't eat there. And having said that, even though, and let's say I do pick there because you do have desserts, 9 times out of 10, I probably won't even order dessert on the menu. But it's the fact of having the option to have that dessert. But I walk into a restaurant, the first thing I do is I start trying to mesh my energy with the environment. Because you're going to sit down, I want to be able to enjoy a meal. There's generally music playing. There's smells coming from the kitchen. You're hearing sounds and sights, women walking by, men walking by, people laughing, people joking. Is this a good environment for me to sit down and have a meal? Seems like it is. So I go ahead. A server comes, he sits me down, asks me if I want water, wine, anything to drink. I put an order in. Take a look at the menu again, even though I've already read it. Maybe I've changed my mind this time, right? So fast forward, I get my food. It was a great meal. I left a nice tip, and then I go on about my business. 3 weeks later, I go back to the same restaurant. Now I'm setting this up. Anyone who is not familiar with the restaurant industry, I'm going to give you just a quick background. The restaurant industry has one of the highest turnover rates of any industry that you could be a part of. And so this is why I use this in comparison to the dog world, because you know what animals have the highest breeder turnover rate in the world? Dogs. So 3 weeks later, you go back to this restaurant. Now, what you don't know is, because you're not a restaurateur, maybe, or you're not a chef, you never worked in a restaurant, is that because the restaurants have a high turnover rate, that for 3 weeks, the guy that made the pate that you love so much, he ain't been there in 2.5 weeks. But you don't know that. You don't know that. You're not going to get the same server 9 times out of 10, so you're not expecting that level of service. So, but you have no idea. You walk in, it seems okay. The music isn't as loud as it was. Maybe this is lunch service. You go in, you sit down. It's kind of off though. You order your food, same thing you had last time. It's got to be the same, because if you're building a dog program of a specific breed, you're going to keep buying the same dog. So you go back, you get that meal, and it just don't taste right. So you ask the server to come over, and hey, I was here 3 weeks ago and this meal was like really great, and it prompted me to come back here. But today it just doesn't taste like it did. And then she goes and explains to you everything I just told you. All the consistency is gone. Jose don't work there no more. Ernesto is making that pate now. You know what I mean? And he ain't that great at it. And he's only there to get a paycheck. He's only there to get a paycheck. He ain't there to really make sure that you do have a great experience and enjoy the environmentals. So B, let me ask you, because I know you had that experience, and I'm sure a lot of us have many times in the restaurant world, but in the canine world, do you remember your first experience like that?
I do. And actually, I'm going to take one step back, because I really appreciate the analogy that you had shared. And really what I'm taking away from what you shared was, if you have two chefs with two unique experiences, two different ways that they read and process flavors, they could be making the same dish, but Ernesto prefers it with a little more salt, and Enrique prefers it with a little more thyme. both the technique may be sound, the execution and preparation of the dish may be sound, but you said it, the taste profiles are slightly different. And so for me, I've only been in the working dog world for about 10 years now. I had a giant schnauzer before that as my first dog, and that was a hard first dog to start with. But what I'm saying is, breeders all have, like chefs, have different taste and flavor profiles, and they could be making the same thing, but one might prefer a little more time, one might prefer a little more salt. The standards between individuals vary based on their experience, their exposure, and how the dogs are being worked. What is it the dogs are expressing? Are we interpreting what they're showing us correctly? And that's open to interpretation. Your network is your net worth. And what I found is, and I was explaining this to someone the other day, part of the reason why I got out of working masters. It's hard to find a good one because people don't know how to read them. And they read what they're doing and say that one's a good one. But I would argue 90% of the masters out there have too much nerve. Oh, but they're banging at the end of the lead, but they're barking, but they're snarling. The intention isn't there. You haven't seen enough good ones, nor do you have the perspective to pull out the best from that dog so that you know where they're working from. And I think it has everything. It goes right back to your, I like this with a little more salt. I like this with a little more time. The time is what elevates the flavor, not the salt. It for the pate, something like that. So I think that was you really expressed that well, and I think there are no and very low barriers to entry, and who you associate with influences your willingness and ability to test dogs. And I think what's unique about dogs is not so much their ability to work, but the culture that surrounds them. If you don't have those chefs who push each other to expand their flavor profile and experiment with new flavors, tastes, and techniques, they don't get better. And people get scared to bring their dogs out in front of an audience and prove who is or is there. And that influences the quality of the animals over time. So
Right.
that was the big takeaway I took. Thank you very much for gracefully putting, your perspective in the restaurant industry and relating that to dogs. I'm sorry I kind of went on that tangent, but please,
No, you're
um,
good. It's all
re-
good.